If your go-to modification for students with wrist pain in downward facing dog is to come onto your forearms and practice dolphin pose, and you want more options to offer your students, then stick around because I'm going to walk you through them in this video. I'm Monica, and I help teachers create accessible classes for students with pain using modern pain science protocols. Today, I'm going to show you 5 different downward facing dog modifications for students with wrist pain, and more importantly, how to offer them as equally valid explorations rather than a hierarchy from the real pose to the beginner modification. Because different options work for different bodies, and we want to give students choices. So first, let's understand what we're trying to do when we modify downward facing dog. For wrist pain, we are not fixing weak wrists or trying to correct alignment. We're helping the nervous system feel safe, exploring different ways to distribute load and weight. When a student's wrist hurt in downward facing dog, their nervous system is saying, I perceive threat here. Our job is to offer options that reduce that perceived threat while still allowing them to participate fully in class. So here are the 5 modifications. The first one is extended puppy dog pose. This is one of my favorite alternatives to Dolphin because it keeps the hips over the heels, so there's way less weight going through the arms and the wrists. From hands and knees, you would cue students to keep their hips over their knees and walk their hands forward towards the top of their mat and begin to press their chest down towards their mat. They don't necessarily need to touch their chest or their forehead to their mat. How would you cue this? You could say if your wrists are sensitive today, you might explore extended puppy dog pose. Walk your hands forward, lower your chest, but keep your hips over your knees. This gives you the shoulder and maybe the mid-back stretch without much wrist load. The second modification is to wedge a rolled mat, a foam wedge, or a towel under the heels of the hands. And this is such a simple prop solution because a wedge or a towel or a mat placed under the heels of the hands reduces the angle of the wrist extension, which often can help reduce discomfort. If you don't have foam wedges, it's okay. You can use a towel or you could use the front of the mat just rolled up. How would you cue this? So you might try placing a rolled towel or the front edge of your mat underneath the heels of your hands. This changes the angle of your wrist extension and often feels more manageable. Notice what you notice. Actually ask students to notice what they notice. Okay, modification number 3 is to place hands on blocks. Students could place their hands on blocks at any height that feels comfortable for them and ask them to push the weight towards their heels. This helps to distribute the weight a little bit more back and off of the wrist. How would you cue it? You could say another option is to place your hands on blocks at whatever height feels good for you. You might start at a high height and work lower or stay high. Both are perfect. Neither is wrong or right. The fourth option is to have students use fists as opposed to flat palms. Some students find that making fists and bearing weight this way instead of flat palms feels way better. This completely changes the angle of the wrist. So instead of it being an extension, the student's wrists are in a more neutral position. How would you cue this? You could say you might try making fists and coming onto your knuckles and notice if this changes the sensation in your wrist. And then finally, modification number 5 is forearm downward facing dog. Yes, dolphin pose. It's still an option. Some students love it. Just present it as one option among many, not the only solution. And be aware that some students find dolphin uncomfortable for their elbows or their shoulders, so it's not always the answer for everybody. How would you cue it? You could say, you could come down onto your forearms in dolphin pose and see if that feels better for your wrists today. Now, here's the key. You present all of these as equally valid explorations. You might say something like, we're moving into downward facing dog. You have lots of way to explore this pose. Downward facing dog with your hands flat. Place your hands on a wedge or a towel. You could place your hands on blocks or make fists. Maybe today you like extended puppy dog pose or dolphin. Try one and notice what you notice, and feel free to try a different option next time. You're not saying if you can't do downward facing dog, here are some other modifications. You're saying here are 5 ways to explore this shape. These modifications work when you present them without hierarchy, when you use invitational language. If you want more modifications like this, I just released a podcast episode that covers wrist pain in downward facing dog, but we also cover plank, chaturanga, tabletop. The link, I'll put it in the description below. I also have a free guide called 10 Chaturanga Variations that breaks down 10 different ways to approach Chaturanga in your classes, and maybe you start to sequence your classes a little bit differently. And finally, I have another free guide called Sequencing Made Easy that helps you structure accessible classes. Both of those are linked in the description below. And if you found this helpful, subscribe to this channel for more practical teaching strategies. I'm Monica, and I'll see you in the next video.